started, we wanted to do a little poll because, as Cassandra mentioned, we wanted to talk to CEOs in this talk, and we'd like to find out how many CEOs are in the audience. So just raise your hand if you're a CEO.
There's some good CEOs here.
There's a few. We were kind of promised a room full of CEOs by Jenny. So, yeah, okay. But that's okay. We're nothing if not flexible.
They are. CEOs love ice cream.
Typical CEO behavior. So the rest of you guys, for the next 20 minutes, you are all deputized. You're all CEOs.
Imagine you've quit your jobs after your bosses stopped screaming in horror. You've started your new company. You're a CEO yourself. And the reason we did it is because the talk today is, as a CEO, how do you lead the way to great design? So for CEOs, this talk is perfect for you. And as for designers, this is also kind of good because you have leaders in your organization. You can talk to them about how they can make a place where design works really well. I'm Braden Kowitz.
And I'm Jake Knapp.
Jake and I, we met on Gmail as we were both designers there. Previously, I guess now you're running sprints across Google, kind of going from team to team, helping them through one iteration of the product development cycle. Before that, Jake worked here. It's kind of a theme. And before that, you were a designer at Oakley, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I'd like to give you a more formal introduction to Braden. Braden is a design partner at Google Ventures. Google Ventures is a part of Google that invests in companies and startups. And Braden advises real-life CEOs, like some of the folks in the crowd.
Zombie CEOs.
And zombie CEOs. And he also helps teams build design teams and also work on their products. Before that, he launched a number of V1 products at Google, and he's a designer who I admire a whole lot.
Awesome.
So you're in good hands.
You can tell we've got a wide range of backgrounds from different companies, and that's kind of where we draw from here. And there's good news, because it used to be that you had to tell CEOs why design is important. You're like, please care about design. And for the most part, leaders that we talk to today, hey, they want great design. Like, they really care and understand about the strategic value of design. So yay, us, right?
Braden, isn't there some device that's like canonical, some revolutionary little handheld thing people always talk about?
The music player, the one with simple controls.
What is that thing?
The Walkman.
Oh, okay. That's not where I thought you were going to say Zune, but okay.
Zune's also good.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. There's another one. Okay. Steve made one, I think.
I don't know. All
right. As long as it's been great design, people have pointed at it and said, like, that's awesome. But the hard part is, like, how do you get it? How do you get that at your organization? How do you make that happen?
That's what we're here to talk about today. We have 4 jobs for you newly minted CEOs, and so there's not going to be a moment of rest for you. Of course, because we're from Google, we initially had 41 ideas, and we tested them, but we have these 4 that we think are the best jobs for you to do. It's very data-driven. So yeah.
Well, it starts with the team, right? Because let's face it, you're a new CEO at a new company, you probably need a design team, right? Because those designs that people look at and go, oh, that's a great design, they're not built by individual people. They're built by whole teams of designers. I mean, whether it's the iPhone or Twitter or Gmail or, I feel here in Virgin America, whole teams of experienced designers craft those things. And as a CEO, it's your job to put that team together and make sure they're integrated into your product development cycle. Now, there's some bad news here, I have to say. Let's get in our time machine and go back 10 years and look at what the world of entrepreneurship and startups was like 10 years ago. I mean, you kind of had like one designer and one product person and then like 50 engineers because building experiences was extremely hard. But that's changed quite a bit because engineers are awesome. They're awesome at scaling and they're awesome at building tools that make life easier. So 10 years ago, you literally had someone in your startup whose job it was to build computers, put them in a rack, worry about the network. We've got Amazon Cloud now. We've got rack space. You don't need those engineers at your company anymore for the most part. But they're not gone. They didn't leave the startup ecosystem. They're just next door. And they're building another product. And that's just the back end, right? We've got amazing front-end toolkits like jQuery and HTML5 that let us build things on the web that we could never build before. And amazing mobile toolkits for the iPhone and Android that just make building experiences on those devices just so much easier. So you need even less engineers. But all those teams, now they're much smaller, and every single one of them needs product and design leadership. So there's a huge demand for designers right now, and it's outpacing the talent. So it's hard to find designers. It's the bad news.
Yeah, it's the bad news for you new CEOs, but it's good news for those of us who are still designers.
Good for us. But if you're a CEO, there's a couple things that can make it easier. I mean, you can think about how to interview people better, how to write job recs better, all sorts of stuff. We don't have time to go into that, but come up and talk to us about it if you're interested. There's 2 things to really remember, though. The first is to make it a recruiting priority. Because so many times I see teams, they hire what's easy for them. I mean, as designers, it's actually easier for me to hire a designer. But as an engineer, it's easier to hire other engineers. It's easy to hire the people that are around, and they're maybe not the people that you need to build your product. So this is what I tell CEOs, end every conversation with, do you know any great designers? It's just kind of what you have to do these days to find someone. And the second tip is, this is the second hack really, is that you have to start right now. Because it's so easy to get into this idea of oh, we'll hire a designer, but we finish this prototype, right? We'll work for 3 months, and we'll finish the prototype, and then we'll hire a designer. No, let's get the launch out the door, and we'll get 1,000 users or 2,000 users, then we'll get a designer. And the problem with that is that it's much harder to convince a designer to come up and clean up a mess than it is to get a designer to come and create something amazing with you. So if you start right away, you can get around that. So your first job as a CEO is to hire a design lead. And I really mean a lead, someone that's probably pretty senior, someone that you trust to make big decisions about your product. If you have a designer on your team now and you don't trust them, it's probably not a good situation for either of you. So you need to find that person. And the good news is there's amazing people out there that can help you create incredible products. You just need to find them.
All right, Braden, who should you hire?
Hey, thanks for setting me up.
No problem, man.
What skills do you need to hire for, right? Because there's one thing that no one ever misses. It's visual design. It's the surface level. Everyone really cares about it. When you think about design, it's the first place people go to. But if you talk to user experience people, if you talk to designers, they'll tell you there's a whole range of skills that you need to build consumer products and digital products today. You need user research, right? Because you need to know what people want. You need product design, help you tell what the product is and what it's not, and how that fits with the business model. You need content and copy, people like Michelle and others that can write amazing words that help you describe the value of your company. You need interaction design. How does it work? And last but not least, you really need good front-end engineers because you need to be able to build the things that is in the design vision. And great news, a lot of companies totally get this, right? They're like, hey, I got to hire for all that stuff. Here's what we're going to do. Oh, my clicker. Come on, clicker. We're hiring. You must be an expert in all 6 of these areas. I wonder how that works.
Let's find out how that works. So actually, look at this list of 6 skills and get a number in your head of how many of these you'd consider yourself an expert in. Raise your hand if you're an expert in at least one of these skills. Okay, a lot of skills here. That's great. That's great. Keep your hand up if you've got at least 2 of these skills.
Ooh,
okay,
look at these
good.
experts.
3, 4, 5, 6.
Ooh,
good.
Hire that guy.
That guy rocks. That guy is awesome. Yeah, he's either awesome or he's a total fraud. But that guy.
Either way, we want to meet you afterwards. When companies do this, when they put all 6 of them in a job rec, designers have a word for it. Does anyone know it? Shout it out. Unicorn. Yeah! They're looking for this magical creature that will come in and solve all the business problems and make it look beautiful and build the darn thing. There's just one problem.
Do they exist, Braden?
Oh, they don't exist. You're not really there's generalists that are kind of good at a little bit of all this stuff.
And there's that guy. There's that guy. So yeah.
But for the most part, they don't exist. So what do you do, right? You're a CEO. You need all these skills. What do? You got to think about your team. You got to think about how your team will overlap over these skill sets and how you get that overlap. Now, there's a couple of hacks here that I've seen work really well. And the first is to, what was the first one? Get overlap, right? Because you might think that you're getting redundancy by hiring people with same skills, but you're bringing together all these people with very different backgrounds, and if they have overlap, if they have common language, it makes it much easier for them to work together. You get much less friction between all the different parts of the design process. That's hack 1. The second hack is to really think about this interaction design or visual design. Most designers that you're hiring kind of do a little bit of both of those, but it's rare to find someone who's an expert in both. They're still out there, right? People are holding their hands up, expert in 2 skills. But as a CEO, if you can only hire one person, you have to decide whether it's visual design, how it looks, or interaction design, how it works. That's the most important. And if you make that decision up front, it's much easier to go through the hiring process and figure out who you're going to hire. Hack number 3. Front-end engineering. Everyone's looking for designers who can code. I mean, we heard that several times today. The hack here is to not to find designers that code because they're so hard to find. You really want to waste their time doing something they're probably not as good at. The trick is to find engineers who love design. And there's tons of them out there that are really good at front-end engineering and like design. And that smooths the process from design into engineering in a way that's just really good. Hack number 4. If you can find someone that's good at user research, it's so valuable because I like to think about center of gravity. My center of gravity, I love sitting behind fireworks and making flows. Other people, it's writing code. It's what they love to do. If you have someone on your team whose center of gravity is like out of the desk, out of the building, talking to users, that's what they love to do every day, you're just going to find it so easy to listen to users and learn from them. So that's your second job as CEO. Ask, what skills are we missing on our team? And you got to fill in those gaps. So those first 2 jobs, those are about building the team. And the next 2 are about habits you can have on your team.
Big remote handoff. All right, see if we can do it hitch-free. Okay, so yeah. So you've got this great team, CEOs, awesome, congratulations. How are you going to build the right product? Well, the saddest thing that can happen is that you have this great design team, you've got this great engineering team, you've got a good idea. You build the product and you find out that nobody wanted it. Oh, that's very sad. That's very sad. So that's why it's so important to watch users, to observe people, to find out what they want beforehand and what the opportunities are, and to find out how it works once you're building it. A lot of CEOs will say, hey, you know what? We already do this, right?
Yeah, like, we have salespeople that talk to our users. They tell us what features we need to build so that they buy it. And we've got support people. When bugs are broken, we fix them. We listen to our customers.
Okay, that stuff's good, but there's nothing that replaces being there in person. So CEOs, when was the last time it was you who was there on the front lines talking to users? And honestly, as CEOs, how do you have the time to do that? I mean, we barely have the time as designers. It's hard. It's actually really hard to make time to do this. So what you're going to have to do is get your team out there. And you want everybody on the team. Like, you see all these guys out here, the engineers, the product folks, the UX folks, they're all there in person together. And what happens when you do that is you get this shared viewpoint, this shared understanding of what the opportunities are. And then when these guys leave, they leave the user space, they go back to their building, they go back to behind their desks, and they're in meetings and they're deciding what to do. They're all going to be on the same page. It helps tremendously. It's the opposite of this all too common situation where one person has all the information in their head and they're shouting at everyone, trying to get them to understand what the users really want, because it's just their job. They're siloed. They're the only ones who does it. Now, like I said, it's hard to do this, and getting away and setting up a study seems like a lot of work. So you got to do it often instead of doing like a big perfect test. If you get into like a rhythm of doing it every month, it makes it a lot easier. Well, what's the chances that a team is going to, on their own, get into a rhythm of doing it once a month? Some teams will do it, but not all. You can't count on that. You can't count on that being grassroots. So your second job as CEO is to ask for this. You're going to tell the teams, hey, you know what? I expect you guys to run studies every month. I expect you to be doing this on a regular basis, even if it's not perfect. And I also want you to call people on it. If they make a decision and they haven't backed it up, if they're decision makers and they haven't seen users in real life, they shouldn't be making those decisions, and they shouldn't settle on it until they go back and find out. So you've got some user data, but it's still easy to make mistakes, right?
Yeah, I've watched user studies and still made designs that honestly are just not that good.
Yeah, I have too, and I got to be honest with you guys. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've made visual design mistakes.
Oh yeah.
I've made mistakes where I committed to something and we got stuck with it, and there's nothing to do about it. And I've done things where I saw this project, I thought I could handle it, and I got involved. I was committed, and I was way over my expertise level. I couldn't get it done, and it was horrible and frankly disgusting. But making mistakes is a part of being a designer. We know that good designers, I consider myself a good designer, but I make mistakes. And in fact, you should make mistakes along the way to making a project. The problem is that you don't know in advance when you're designing something which ones are the ones that are going to turn out to be mistakes and which ones are the golden eggs. It's hard to tell, but there's a way that you can protect yourself from that. So I'm going to tell you guys a little story to sort of illustrate this idea. This is a story about Gmail Priority Inbox. Priority Inbox is a feature that, I don't know if any of you use Gmail and maybe use this, but we've got some technology that can determine how important mail is based on you and your personal, what you read. And we'll rank it differently, and we can display it in a different way. And we've launched this feature, and it's been very successful. We get great feedback from users. Here's this guy from TechCrunch says, it's game-changingly awesome. And for those of you who read TechCrunch, you know that they don't use hyperbole, so I'm sure that he meant it. but in the beginning, when we started off with this idea and we were trying to figure out, how to build it, we talked to users, and we ourselves knew like we were onto something. We thought this was a good idea and something that we were well equipped to build, but we weren't sure, exactly how to build it, right? So we'd done that initial stage of diligence that we talked about, but as a designer, I didn't know like exactly what direction to take. So I did one good practice, which is to, do a bunch of different approaches. I designed every way I could to sort of explore the space. And I narrowed it down to 4. There were definitely 4 of these that I thought were the best, and let's call them A, B, C, and D. And they were all pretty good, though. To my mind, I wasn't sure which ones of these were going to be the huge mistakes and which one was the right path. So I was lucky because the engineers agreed to build 4 prototypes. They hacked together prototypes of those 4 UIs on top of the real Gmail UI, and we were able to take 200 Googlers and get them to sign up to go through this hellish user study. So for 4 weeks, every week, you guys think about what's in your work email and how important it is to use your work email. Well, on their work email, they would come in the morning on Monday, and they wouldn't know how it was going to work. We would change it every week, and with no advance warning to them, other than they had signed up. And at the end of the week, they gave us their feedback. Fewer expletives than you'd think, but a bit. And the idea was, at the end, we'll know which one to build. We'll look at the feedback and we'll say, okay, it's clear. It's, let's say it's C. But actually, that's not what happened at all. This would have been another one of my tragic mistakes. What happened was each person kind of had a different viewpoint. And out of those 200 people, we saw these no consistent pattern. The responses were all over the place. And after we kind of looked through all those and filtered through it, we realized what was going on was, okay, we can look at the designs that we have, and we can sort of determine that this one, D, is the best. With what we know about how we can improve it, with what we can interpret about what's working for people, this is the way to go. But there's these other things that were really surprising. There were these treasures in the other designs that actually meant a lot to people. And if we could bring those in and let people configure their UI to have those, that would add a lot. I never thought that was the case when we started. And if we hadn't prototyped, I wouldn't have known. We would have spent all this time building the product for real instead of a hacked together version and been wrong when we launched it. So your 4th job as CEO is to ask for prototypes. Because when you prototype in this way, your engineers are writing code that they're going to throw away. And in the immediate moment when you're trying to be fast, it seems like a waste of time. As a CEO, you can ask for that and you can expect your teams to do it. It's another thing that's hard for teams to do on their own. All right, so we've given you 4 jobs today, CEOs. The first 2 are about building your team. So Braden talked to you guys about finding a design partner, someone who you can trust, because you may not be the design expert yourself. And we talked about covering skill gaps when you hire. The second 2 things are about habits for teams, having a habit of seeing users regularly, and having a habit of prototyping. And
we know we should do all this stuff, right?
Yeah, we do. I mean, you kind of come to a design conference, you probably expect to hear stuff like this. We know we should do it, but I don't do it all the time, dude.
No. I mean, I've definitely skipped steps of this and regretted it.
Yeah.
It's like flossing.
It is like flossing.
But I think it's important to talk about because CEOs, they tend to be like really confident, right? And when you've got this idea and you're so confident it's going to go out there in the world and be perfect, it takes a lot of humility actually to take that idea and put it in front of users and really listen to them when they tell you it's not the right thing. And it takes a lot of humility to take that idea and realize that your first idea might not be the best one and do the divergent thinking that Jake did and come up with 10 different ideas and pare it down and find out, oh, that other idea is better. And it takes a hell of a lot of humility to hand over this idea that you had to someone with a very different skill set, a designer, and really trust them to make changes to your vision. It's really hard to do that. But we hope that some of the tips and stuff that we talked about today can help you create that environment with the team and habit to let good design like that happen.
Thanks a lot, you guys. Appreciate your time.